I grew my buzz cut out. Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie, and I probably have a line on my head now from wearing a wig. Yes, obviously that was not me growing my buzz cut out, but I have grown my buzz cut out not once but twice. And a very lovely subscriber of mine actually posted in the comments that they wanted some advice on growing a buzz cut out, and so that's why I'm making this video. For anyone who's new to my channel, I actually originally buzzed my hair from long to short in 2019, and that was like a charity thing. I'll link it in the description because it's old news for anyone who's been watching me for a while. And yeah, I first grew it out back then, and I made a few errors along the way and buzzed it again, and then grew it all the way back down to long hair again, and then buzzed it again a couple of years later, which is where I am now. But I learned some things along the way from the couple of times that I did grow it out, and so I'll share that here with you guys now. But obviously a bit of a disclaimer is the fact that my hair naturally is sort of like European ringlet sort of style hair, and so if you've got either European straight hair or if you've got maybe Afro hair or a different type of hair, then this video may not help you, but hey, that's okay. There's lots of other buzz cut videos on my channel that you may be interested in. I will start by telling you about the second time that I actually buzzed my hair, and there's a reason why I'm telling you the second time before I tell you the first time. So 2020 February, gosh, mine's back, I actually just freshly rebuzzed. I'd had my hair growing out and then I freshly rebuzzed my hair. Only 1 month later things happened, and it ended up that we couldn't go to the hairdressers, or the barbers in my case, and at that point everybody was ordering things to come to their house, and so I couldn't even sort of like order some clippers or anything that I could use myself at home. So I had to go through the growout process without any assistance from a hairdresser or anything like that. And so it grew in that sort of like straight out sort of style. I would say it was probably approximately a month, maybe two. Within a month, I'd say, because it was buzzed to a grade 2 all over with just sort of a very light fade around the sides. I'll probably be adding some photos, right, maybe here for you guys to see what styles it is I'm talking about as I'm talking about through the video. So it was approximately a month before it had grown out into sort of like a uncomfortable sort of like length, which quite frankly it was quite nice, the fact that we couldn't go and see other people, although I did see another person and it was like really embarrassing. But anyway, that's not the point. I'd say it was about 2 months before it was actually in a sort of like a proper grown out stage where it was no longer like hideous. And by that point it had started to curl, but the problem, which is a problem I still currently have while having a buzz cut, is if I usually buzz it every 2 weeks, and if I miss the second week and go to the third week, it starts doing this really annoying thing where the ends just start to curl out, but not long enough to be a curl, just long enough to look a bit odd and look like I've slept funny. And actually I've noticed one of my videos recently, I had a really annoying one at the back, which was really bothering me when I watched the video, but I couldn't be bothered to re-record it, so no worries, whatever. Yes, within 2 months it had started to actually turn into proper curls, and within 3 months it was actually like quite close curls to my head. Now, where's the advice in this is probably what you're thinking. Right now I'm just telling you my story, but trust me, there is advice coming. I'm just telling you the mistakes at the beginning first. So throughout that time, I had no use of sort of like products or anything, and it was just growing out naturally. There was no sort of adaptations I made by going to the barbers to sort of like assist in the grow out process, because a lot of people think if you're going to grow out a buzz cut, you just grow it out. You just leave it alone, don't touch it, don't cut it, and just grow it out. I'm going to tell you right now, don't do that. Don't do that. It didn't work for me, and I can't imagine it working for most people. Maybe if you're very, very lucky and you've got a very particular type of hair, it might work for you, but in general, it's just going to look wrong. It's just going to look unkempt and a bit odd. Regardless of what type of hair you have, it's going to look weird. Even if you've got completely straight hair, you might be growing here and then it's growing down here and it's going over your ears ever so slightly, and it just looks a bit odd. my advice is don't do that. You do what you want to do, but my advice would be to not do that. So we then have the point where it was like quite close to my head and it was called curly, and I was really lucky. I had to take a driving license photo because yes, I'm that old that I have to renew it. So I had to have a driver's license photo taken, and that one day it looked great. Day before it looked terrible, day after it looked terrible, but that one day it looked great. But anyway, the point I'm making is that if you're just having it just grow out without any kind of like adaptations or styles or trims, then it is going to do what it's going to do on its own. Shortly after that, the hairdressers then did reopen and I was able to go and get some assistance, and this is my first piece of advice to you. If you're growing out buzz cut, start by turning it into a pixie cut. Start by having it grow slightly longer on top, but having the sides and the back trimmed. Now, the second time I'd done the grow out, which was the time during 2020 going into 2021, I didn't go for like a really, really, really short like back and short back and sides. You know what I'm trying to say? I just had it sort of like, because it had already done the sort of annoying sticking outwards bit, and I just had it just trimmed, and so it was just shorter on the sides but like well kept, and especially going down into the nape of the neck, but keeping it longer on top until it became sort of more of a style where it became quite, I'd say, more of a feminine sort of like floppy on top but kind of in at the side style, and then just started to gently grow all of it out from there until it eventually goes sort of like down and then turned into this sort of length where I was then able to turn it into an actual bob, and from a bob it's quite easy to grow into long hair. The first time that I actually started to grow it out, because way back in 2020 when I first started to grow, well, when I first cut it short, it was done as like a charity thing. My intention was not to necessarily keep a buzz cut, and so I did not keep it buzzed. Once I'd done it once, I straight away started growing it into an actual style, and that was where I learned which products help when you are going from a buzz into longer hair, into an actual style, when you don't have issues with not being able to get to hairdressers or shops or anything else. So the first time I let it grow slightly on the top, but had the sides and the back trimmed slightly shorter, and I used my first miracle product, which I'd never used before in my life. I actually went to some male friends of mine who've always had short hair and said, guys, look at the length of my hair, what products am I supposed to use, because I don't know. And they pointed me in the direction of Ceramate, which is, I mean, it's obviously a Spanish product because I was in Spain at the time, but it is literally just matte wax. And the level is number 4 because it needed to be strong enough to kind of like hold my hair in place, but not that sort of like you're knocking on wood sort of level, because I didn't want it to look solid. You know, I didn't want it to be, who is that character from that kids TV program? There's a girl called Stephanie in it, and he's got like really solid hair. Let me know in the comments because I can't remember his name. Anyway, I didn't really want to go for that kind of look, so I made sure it was like strong enough to hold my hair in place but without being like completely solid. So I went for a number 4 matte wax, and it was amazing because at first, when it was like still quite short on top, I was able to sort of like put it slightly forward into, I'd say, what looked like a kind of 60s, possibly sort of twiggy style look. And then as it started to grow further out and got a bit longer, at that point I decided to kind of experiment a little bit, and I actually went for a grade 1 on the sides, so really short on the sides, that sort of like Velcro effect sort of feeling on the sides. And by that point, obviously, it was too long to have it down the front, and so I used the wax to just sort of like smidgen like that, comb it through to the back, and it kind of kept it in place at the back. I think that would also work if you have straight hair, but it was kind of cool because it had like, because I've got curly hair, it just kind of made it have a little bit of a wave to it, but without being a bit like, you know, crazy or too much, and it kept its place in the wind, and it was like wonderful and perfect. Then as it started to grow out a little bit more and it ended up in proper curls, by that point it was not really the right style to sort of like have the wax type product on it, because it would have just been a bit, I don't know, odd looking. So at that point the wax was out. and sorry Wax, that was very rude of me. And I opted for salt spray. Yes, and salt spray was great because when I've had long hair before, I have used sort of like mousses and stuff, but I've always sort of found that mousse makes it kind of a bit crispy, and it especially like, oh, I'm sorry if you're a lover of frizzies, but frizzies for me just makes my hair look greasy, even if I freshly washed it. But most of the sort of mousses and stuff will either make it look crispy or greasy, and neither of those are looks that I particularly want for my hair. So salt spray was what I then opted for, especially because as it was shorter. When it's longer, it's not the end of the world, although I do prefer salt spray when it's longer as well, personally. But when it's shorter with salt spray, it's able to sort of stay light and fluffy without looking greasy, and it doesn't look too crispy, and it sort of doesn't really hold it in place per se, but kind of takes away the sort of frizziness to it, but keeps it in a good style, while not sort of but not being too much of a heavy product. So salt spray for when it gets to that longer sort of bit. Bye, salt spray. Sorry. I'll pick them up after. Doesn't mean it's got to tidy up anyway, so whatever. So then once it's sort of in that style, and like I had it shorter, like really, really short on the sides, and then I'd started to grow it out. But I then made a fatal error. Yes, I did. I bleached it. It looked fantastic, and as well as the fact that it looked amazing, it was kind of like something that I'd never really been able to do, was dye my hair all sorts of funky colours, because my hair being darker, it's much harder for the funky colours to take on darker hair. And so all my life, whenever I've sort of had to dye my hair, it's just never really stuck. So I made the most of having it bleached. I had it shockingly bleached, and just by pure coincidence I went to LA for a charity thing at the time, and so I got a tan with bleached hair, which looked fantastic. I loved it. But then I decided to dye it some funky colours because they would take on top of the bleach. I dyed it blue, I dyed it purple, I even dyed it a kind of like, I'm gonna say like a seaweedy green colour. What was I thinking? Anyway, I did that. And my hair just became brittle and gross. And I mean gross. And so when it got to the point where I started to grow it out, and I must say, it wasn't really a massive problem with the growing out in terms of the roots, because that was always a concern, having it so short and having it bleached and having it like grow out. That wasn't so much of an issue, but it was the fact that because it had the bleach underneath it, and then on top of the bleach, I had so many different colours that I had put on top of that hair. And so as it grew out, you could feel the baby hair coming through. It was all soft and lovely, as it is right now. And my friends like to stroke it, but yeah. Anyway, sorry. And then on top, I had this horrible crispy hair that just, it even sounded brittle, you know? Like if you run your fingers through your hair and it's got that sort of sort of sound to it, it's just horrid. And so that is why I then, a second time, probably about 6 months after the first time I buzzed it, that's why the second time I then decided to buzz it again, because I was like, I can't have my hair grow out and be like this. It was disgusting. And so that's why I buzzed it the second time. That is why I've told you the things in the wrong order, because the first time was what time I made all the mistakes, and the second time was when like I knew the lessons from the first time, but unfortunately couldn't do the lessons because nothing was open. But hey, that's how it goes. And so that, my friends, is how I grew my buzz cut out twice, and the mistakes. So number one, do not go bleaching your hair unless you're prepared to suffer the consequences. I'm sure there's lots of people who are going to be telling me in the comments about different kinds of bleach and stuff you can use today, but you've got to remember I'm going back a few years, so maybe it's improved now, I don't know, who knows. But just be prepared that, you know, if you've got virgin hair coming through, look after it, don't ruin it. Maybe just go for something slightly less harsh than bleach. Or go for it and then buzz it back off again. That also works. I've been considering doing the same thing recently. Do you think I should bleach my hair again? I'm thinking of a bleach buzz cut, because then I can just like, continue to buzz it, it's fine. It'll still come back virgin hair. Let me know. Would you like to see me bleach my hair and then grow it out again? Let's see. Definitely biggest piece of advice, I'd say I got 3. One is, as it starts to grow out, make sure you don't just let it grow out. Make sure you look after the sides and the back to turn it into an actual style before you then start to grow it out. Number 2, when it's very short, wax is a great way to keep it under control. And number 3 is, as it grows a bit longer, salt spray is a great way to keep it under control without it looking too producty. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. And so I'm going to sign off there, say goodbye, and I will no doubt see you next week for another video. And yeah, bye!